and I'm about to blow your mind with facts, evidence, and proof that the world's largest social media platform is, in fact, systematically reframing the minds of young kids and Americans across the world.
בשלב מסוים נחשפתי לקבוצה פנימית בתוך הרשת הפנימית של טיק טוק, שהייתה בעצם קבוצת תמיכה בפלסטין. הלכתי לבדוק מי העובדים האלה בעצם. וראיתי שכולם, אבל ממש 100% מהם, הם עובדים בצוותים של מה שנקרא Trust and Safety. זאת אומרת, הם אחראים על הבטיחות והביטחון של התכנים בטיק טוק. הם אחראים על המודרציה, איזה תוכן עולה ואיזה תוכן יורד. בעצם ממש קובעים מה המשתמש בקצה בארצות הברית ובאירופה יראה ומה הוא לא יראה.
TikTok, the world's largest social media platform, a Chinese-owned company. 1.7 billion users, 150 million users just in the United States of America. That's almost half of the US population. Those numbers speak volumes. Those numbers have the capacity to have an effect on an individual's education, character, perspective, information, and behavior. Those numbers have the ability to influence. Since the beginning of this war in the Middle East, what started as just Israel and Hamas on October 7th, to then the international stage, half of a year later, we are officially hearing for the first time a former TikTok employee who comes out and admits how the social media giant moderates their content based on political accusations. This is not just something to ignore. This is huge. There are a lot of people around the world that have been making claims that TikTok is a psychological warfare against Americans, that it is in fact influencing the minds of young Americans and teens. And with all of these claims analytically and data-driven, the CEO and the company has continuously denied all of the allegations against the platform that they create a bias based on the content that it puts in front of its users. Personally, I am not a government official. I am not a representative of the IDF. I'm not a paid spokesperson. I'm not a geopolitical analyst either. I don't even work for some competitor of TikTok. I am, however, a truth seeker. And I'm about to blow your mind with facts, evidence, and proof that the world's largest social media platform is, in fact, systematically reframing the minds of young kids and Americans across the world.
של הממשלה שהתחילו להיחסם ממש עם תחילת המלחמה, רק בגלל שהיה להם כיתוב של ביחד ננצח, דגלי ישראל או דברים כאלה, ופתאום טיק-טוק התחילה לחסום אותם בצורה מוחלטת. הטענה בזמנו הייתה שזאת אמירה פוליטית, ביחד ננצח. פורום משפחות החטופים עשו קמפיין בעצם בכל הרשתות החברתיות, ובטיק-טוק הקמפיין הזה נפסל, בטענה שהוא פוליטי. סרטונים לא נפסלו בגלל פריים ספציפי שהיה בעייתי. עקרונית, כל נושא החטופים היה נושא שהוחלט שהוא נפסל והוא לא יכול לעלות בטיק-טוק. בריג'קטים שאנחנו קיבלנו לקמפיינים האלה, היה ברור ועל השולחן שכל נושא החטופים הוא לא במדיניות של טיק-טוק.
A few months ago, a letter written by Osama bin Laden in 2002, 1 year after 9/11, went viral on TikTok. All of a sudden, this platform was trending a letter justifying one of the worst terrorist attacks against the United States in history. US lawmakers began using all of these videos of young Americans justifying the letter that bin Laden wrote as a reason to renew the call to ban the Chinese-owned app in the United States.
Did y'all know that the tax dollars are given to Israel to help them kill all the people in Palestine?
I literally read it last night.
Everything he said was valid.
This man didn't care about us.
All it took was reading one paragraph in a letter that mentions Palestine.
Who's really the terrorist?
These daily users, TikTokers, content creators, and influencers justified the bad, the evil, and the anti-Semitic lies that the former leader of Al-Qaeda published by essentially associating themselves with the awful, vile messaging and words of Osama bin Laden. How could it be that so many of these same individuals, for the majority of their life, have always been paying their respects to the United States of America, to 9/11, to those who lost a family member? But suddenly, after coming across a viral trend on TikTok, they end up choosing to side with the individual who led the attack that they were previously against? This idea of influence and psychological warfare against America dates back prior to when TikTok existed. And in order to understand where we are today, we need to go back in time and zoom out to understand what occurred historically. Through the mid to late 1950s, the KGB was the main security agency for the Soviet Union. And in fact, there is an incredible amount of evidence showing that the KGB had a playbook for many years to fight America through psychological warfare because they ultimately realized that no other way was winnable. I want you guys to meet Ion Pacepa. Ion was born in Romania, and he was a part of the secret police of the Socialist Republic of Romania. And in 1978, he arrived in West Germany on a diplomatic mission to assassinate an American journalist who was covering Romania. Pacepa had no interest in murder, and instead he entered the US Embassy and announced his intention to defect. In politics, a defector is somebody who gives up allegiance or loyalty to one state in exchange for another. In sports, for example, it could be when somebody, a fan or even a player, switches their loyalty and support from one team to another. And this person could be considered a traitor by the original side, in this case, the original team. So Pacepa ended up living the rest of his life in the United States, living under an assumed name. He provided the West a ton of documents, many of which where he exposed the corruption and cruelty inside of the regime in Romania. Pacepa was actually one of the first people ever to talk about this communist strategy of manipulating information to create dissent and tension between the Soviets and all of its enemies, mainly the United States. So essentially, Romania and Russia were using intense psychological warfare to change the minds of Americans.
החוסר שוויון הזה שלי אין דרך אחרת להסביר אותו חוץ מהטיה מכוונת ומוחלטת וקשה נגד ישראל.
הסרטונים שמטרתם העלאת מודעות לחטופים לא, ביחד ננצח לא, עם ישראל חי גם לא. מה כן אתם שואלים?
In 2006, during the Second Lebanon War, and when Israel left the Gaza Strip, Pacepa wrote that the Soviet Union spread anti-Semitic propaganda across the Middle East to increase hatred for Jews. Jews in the United States and Jews in Israel, of course. In his letter, he mentions that society propagandists set up large party-state organizations to infiltrate thousands of agents of change into the Arab and Muslim world. Why? The goal for them was to instill this idea that the United States was run by Jewish people who gave land and protection to others and in return worked and fought for it. So the Soviets spread the idea that Israel planned to make the Islamic Middle East into a Jewish colony. Pacepa even mentions the Soviets' crucial role in funding different terrorist groups in the Middle East region. So Pacepa, in this context, is crucial to understand because he helped the United States realize something really important: the role of the Soviets in supporting terrorism in the Middle East. Terrorism against Israel, terrorism against Jews has grown dramatically. Anti-Semitism has grown dramatically.
אני חושב שהפלטפורמה, במתכוון או שלא במתכוון, אני לא יודע, מייצרת איזשהו סיכון כלפינו כעם יהודי. לאט לאט התחלתי להיחשף או להרגיש שהפלטפורמה מאוד מאוד מוטה נגד ישראל ויש בה הרבה מאוד תכנים אנטישמיים, ולא תמיד אנחנו כפלטפורמה מצליחים להתייחס לזה בצורה הנכונה.
Remember what I told you in the beginning of this video about TikTok? 1.7 billion users, 150 million of them in the United States, owned by China. When you take a few steps back and you zoom out and you look at this entire complexity in the Middle East and internationally for Jewish people and Israelis, you must look at who supports whom in context to this war and of course the entire game of psychological warfare. Hamas is a proxy of Iran. Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran. The Houthi rebels are a proxy of Iran. All of these proxies and tentacles have grown across the Middle East, and they're all under the Iranian regime. Iran supports, funds, controls, and manipulates all of these proxies. Iran is also Russia's ally, and they have been for a very long time. And so where does China fit into this entire equation? The country with the world's largest social media platform, TikTok. Well, all three of them are allies with each other.
בשלב מסוים נחשפתי לקבוצה פנימית בתוך הרשת הפנימית של טיק טוק, שהייתה בעצם קבוצת תמיכה בפלסטין. הלכתי לבדוק מי העובדים האלה בעצם. וראיתי שכולם, אבל ממש 100% מהם, הם עובדים בצוותים של מה שנקרא Trust and Safety. זאת אומרת, הם אחראים על הבטיחות והביטחון של התכנים בטיק טוק. הם אחראים על המודרציה, איזה תוכן עולה ואיזה תוכן יורד. בעצם ממש קובעים מה המשתמש בקצה בארצות הברית ובאירופה יראה ומה הוא לא יראה.
This trust and safety unit within TikTok is essentially the algorithm. The access to manipulation is literally at their fingertips. And when you look closely at the algorithm, at the data, at the analytics, the stats actually start to show you, and you begin to understand that TikTok, in fact, is 1000% moderating content based on political accusations.
The evidence of TikTok's threat to America's national security is clear. Just recently, there was a Harvard-Harris poll that showed that the majority of young people in this country believe that Hamas was justified in their October 7th terrorist attack on Israel.
TikTok has seen a surge in pro-Palestinian content. Numbers show that in the last 30 days, the hashtag Palestine has received 12 billion views across TikTok, while hashtag Israel has 8 billion.
The content that you consume, the videos that you watch, the accounts that you interact with, all become the algorithm. You essentially are the algorithm, but you become the algorithm that has been intentionally put in front of you. Our phones are the first thing that we look at when we wake up, and they are the last thing that we look at before we go to bed. Back in the mid-1900s, the KGB playbook was to fight America through psychological warfare because that was their only option for them to win. Pacepa explained to the United States that the Soviets' endgame was to get as many people as possible, to get everyone to hate America. And so this playbook has been adopted by China, but now with much better tools. Because now they have regular social media. They have TikTok, which are ways for them to get people in the world to hate the United States. Israel is the biggest and closest ally to the US. And not only is it the closest, it is the best one the US has inside of the Middle East. When these countries, such as China, attack Israel through anti-Semitism on the world's largest social media platform, it is not just about Israel. It is designed to weaken the United States by delegitimizing their main partner. They want to work the US from inside by creating distrust between government and people to get people to feel that the government is actually working against its citizens. And the truth is, it is working. You can see how the United States has completely changed their political stance on this war. Now they have political pressure to go against Israel. Back in October, November, and December, compared to right now, the United States has done a full 180.
Responding to the allegations, TikTok says it's not the algorithm that's playing up pro-Palestinian content since October 7, but rather that engagement with Palestine existed among younger generations even before Israel's war on Gaza began.
TikTok and the company's leadership have always denied claims that their platform is feeding a bias to the majority of its users. In a company email statement, they wrote, and I quote, "Our community guidelines apply equally to all content on TikTok, and we strongly reject any of the baseless claims to the contrary. We're committed to consistently enforcing our policies to protect our community." In a USA Today article, Jewish social media influencers are quoted here trying to combat the hate and anti-Semitism they have all been facing since this uproar on TikTok. As Jews, we are scared, distraught, and at a breaking point. This isn't just digital harassment. These are real-world implications, comedian Amy Schumer and actress Deborah Messing wrote. We are scared to leave our homes. We feel compelled to hire armed security. We are frightened to post for fear of receiving more suffocating digital hate. We fear that only an unfathomable tragedy befalling a Jewish TikTok creator will lead to change. Is that what you are waiting for? How could TikTok deny all of these claims when a large portion of this psychological warfare has turned into real-life danger, real-life violence, incited against other people? The data, the analytics, the content, and the people on the receiving end simply prove otherwise. Back then, when Pacepa was around in the 1950s, psychological warfare was executed differently. It was harder to reach people abroad and audiences internationally on a regular basis. But now, today, it's so easy, in a matter of minutes, in a matter of seconds. When you engage with one post on TikTok supporting opposing views, your entire feed becomes aggressively that. You inevitably become drawn into that ideology subconsciously. And then that becomes your new systematic framework for how you form your own view, opinion, or perspective on something that you still don't truly have enough context about. TikTok is Gen Z's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and mainstream media. That has become their source of legitimacy. But TikTok continuously pushes against the concerns over its algorithms, claiming that it doesn't take sides and that there are rigorous measures put in place to prevent manipulation. Really? So this trust and safety unit within TikTok, whose sole responsibility is to control moderation, distribution, and removal of all content on the platform, which shares privately amongst themselves pro-Palestinian content, is there rigorous measure put in place to prevent manipulation? TikTok is the manipulator. And sadly, kids, youth, and teens don't know any better. TikTok is manipulating the minds of those who are still growing, those who are still maturing, those whose brains are still developing. TikTok is supposed to be a social media platform, not a news media outlet. In high school, if you hear a rumor and it spreads, that rumor has an increasing chance of becoming the truth, whether it is true or not. And on TikTok, it is just a rumor in a high school. It's quicker, it's fast, and everything is amplified. There are two wars going on simultaneously for Israel and Jewish people across the world. The first is the on-ground fighting, where IDF soldiers are inside of the Gaza Strip trying to rescue all of the hostages that need to come home, and at the same time, protecting the Israeli borders from any incoming attacks into the country. Also, Jewish people across the world now, in North America, South America, Europe, Australia, regions of the Middle East, they have to hide their identities or sometimes defend themselves from violence, such as breaking into businesses, breaking into homes, or even in person at protests, where all of this psychological warfare has led to almost nothing but anger and violence. The second war that is taking place is the online media war. Israel and the global Jewish community are losing by a landslide. It gets worse by the minute due to the manipulation of content, of news, of information that people are receiving. TikTok might be the world's largest social media platform, but this whole story doesn't end with TikTok. We are severely setting up Gen Z and future generations to have a completely altered reality of what is truly going on in the Middle East, leaving out massively important contributing factors historically, which has led us to the current landscape of the Middle East. For TikTok, for a company this large, this former employee coming out exposing the truth is a major, major deal. This could be the first of others who also end up deciding to speak up. But unfortunately, most people in the world right now are unaware of this video that I just showed you, because the interview is on Israeli television and not many people in the world watch. This is an obscure channel in an obscure language, and it has not hit mainstream media yet. I truly hope that this is the first of many. I hope that after watching this video, you have a better understanding of where this all stems from, why it's happening, and the purposes behind it. Do you have a TikTok account? Do you consume content there? If so, do you agree with the algorithm and how the platform is built? What has your experience been? Comment below and let me know if you agree or even disagree. And we need to open a discussion about this immediately, because if we don't, more and more of the next generations are going to be continuously fed a false narrative of reality.